get all the visual and the audio material I could get, and just go through it again and again and again, trying to work out, you know, when it was set, that's a given, and well, how the Cybermen could look like this when they look like that. It was just a process of a kind of academic process, which is why I set it in the kind of the meta logic of an alien race who were historians, who were academics, trying to make sense out of fragments of documents that they've got. The documents that they've got are the documents that we see, and the idea, the conceit was that, you know, because we know everything we've been broadcasting since we started with television has been going out through the galaxy, and so it's like that old Catholic idea that, you know, our sins will always be seen. Our programs, and some of them are sinful, I guess, are going to be picked up by alien races sometimes. Anyway, so this alien race, the archivists, were picking up documents all the time, and Hegelia, archivist Hegelia, was trying to make sense of it in the same way that I was trying to make sense to put this story together. So it was a jigsaw, as I say. You know, as I say at the end, you know, this is the pattern that I've made. I put them in. I'm going to throw out the pieces now. It's your turn to put them together.
Are you in any way tempted to update the book with all the latest cyber?
It's such hard work, and I don't want to be uncharitable. It's just that it's so totally different now. The method, the idea of making something an alternative universe destroys any sense, I think, of continuity in our universe. So it would be like playing, well, I was going to say three-dimensional chess, but it's almost like, you know, it's 12-dimensional chess or 13-dimensional chess, which is believed to be the number of dimensions that we actually have in the universe. Much too difficult for my to know that.
So looking back across all of those stories that you were in, which one stands out for you as being the happiest experience for you to work on as an actor?
Well, Earthshock was the start, and I think the best in many ways. And I have very, you know, fond memories of doing it. But each of them has something really to look back on and say, well, that was so special. I mean, it was so special for me as a kind of growing up with Patrick Troughton as a doctor, you know, to actually work with him, meet him, talk to him in the pub that we stayed in, and then, you know, not so long after that actually at all. Looking back, about 2-3 years, he died. He was dead. So, and you know, 5 doctors just working with the other doctors, and Anthony Amy. That was purely from a, you know, an actor's point of view. I think you just and working with lots of the technicians there, getting to know them again. Yeah, very nice. Attack was a different thing. It was a new director. We had another cyber lieutenant, and so meeting Brian, you know, he's still a friend. Professionally, it was you know, Brian Glover, Maurice Coburn. Sorry, it's not to do with the actual product, because the product is something so totally different. When you're working on something, you don't know how it's going to turn out. You just know that you've got to get good relationships. You've got to get a firm basis with the text. You've got to have a good relationship with the director. And the director for Attack, what was his name? Matthew Robinson.
Yes.
I think. Yeah, he rang me, and because the cyber controller comes into Attack with the Sun, and quite early on, Matthew rang me and said, "Would you like to play the cyber controller?" And I thought, well, it's kind of wrong, isn't it? Because the cyber leader is in it, and so I feel that's my part. And I said, well, what? Can't you get the original back? And he said, well, that's an idea. And then so, Michael Kilgareth came back. They had to enlarge the costume a little bit. But that is all very well, he's a controller and he has a different head, and it'd been 18 years, he said, 18 years since he'd played the part before. And I thought that, it's amazing, an actor could come back and play the part. And now here am I, 37 years from Earthshock.
Yes.
And I don't know if anybody knows this, but I've just reprised the Cyber Leader in the Big Finish production.
Well, I believe you may have a CD
Oh.
on you.
Yes.
I don't know if this is released yet.
Oh, so that's
Yes.
that's the. I don't think it's out yet.
Is it the end of
Is it
August?
out?
Just out.
Is it available?
Right.
So we can actually talk about it.
Excellent.
I'm sorry.
No. Stealing your catchphrase. So, was it easy to slip back into the role? I mean, easier possibly because you weren't encased in the costume.
It might have been that. I have to say, it's a superb script, and this is by Andrew Smith, who was a BBC Doctor Who writer. He's written a lot for Big Finish Doctor Who, and I hadn't known him, and I talked to him for the first time when we did a podcast, Blue Box podcast, some weeks ago. And I hope to meet him. I haven't yet met him, but I've exchanged emails with him. And I just think it's such an intelligent and detailed script, and it's doing that very difficult thing of bringing two different areas of Doctor Who together. So it's bringing Unit, hi Richard, together with the Cybermen. And that, I believe, hasn't happened since 67, since the invasion, 68. Yeah. Which it's extraordinary. That's an extraordinary Cyberman story. Yeah. And I think, Andrew, although he hadn't written for the Cybermen before, he very cleverly has put things in which shows that he really understands what they're about.
Yeah. So a joy to just reprise the role.
Yeah, and the interesting thing is that do you know the setup with Big Finish? It must have been explained, but my experience of radio has been that you have a mic like this, and you may be talking to an actor here and here, and there may be another mic over there to give some sense of distance or whatever, but you're all in the same room. At the Big Finish studios, you are ushered into these tiny boxes. Each have a mic, you've got your cans on. You don't see the other actors, you just hear them. So it's almost as if you're experiencing the audio experience as the audience will experience it. And in our case, we had, through our cans, when we spoke, we had the cyber voice coming in. And so we could hear, and when you did this, you got the full fatness. And that was a real help. So.
What I'd like to do, if Tom is there, is I'd like you to look back on a few moments of your Who career, if we could, and then I've just got a couple more questions. So if we could run the VT, if you could, please. Just take
I've just got a few jokes.
Really briefly then, David.
I'm going to do a few jokes.
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
What do you mean again, Doctor. Excellent.
So to look back there, and also to bear in mind that of course it wasn't just the cyber leader, you have been the Doctor. I think we should mention that briefly. 1989, when I saw you perform on stage, I didn't see that particular performance, but do tell us about the ultimate adventure. What that was like to be there.
Yeah, it was ultimate, and it was a real adventure. Yes, it was so interesting for having that conversation. We had a real conversation before this interview, and Paul told me about his being there in '89. This is, just to get back to my opening remarks, this is what acting is about, what performance is about. It's the connection between you and the people who are there. And there's a certain distance when it's not theatre. And I think that's, you proved it, what I said, the bug is there. You got the bug, didn't you?
Yeah.
With me,
yes.
in my string vest,
yes.
And my leather, whatever you call it, and my panda eyes, pretending to be bad. But it obviously worked to some extent.
Seeing David on stage made me want to go into theatre, which meant that I took the degree I did, and that's where I met my wife, and hence our 2 children. Bizarrely.
I don't think you could blame your children.
But looking back on those clips, what does Doctor Who mean to you as an actor, as a person, to have been part of that show? What does it mean to you?
It's very deeply embedded in my life. I didn't, when I took the part, I didn't imagine that. But it's still there. In fact, there's such a lot of reawakening interest in the 80s Cybermen. I find that I'm being asked to talk about it, and I'm writing about it, and this thing, which is bringing it all back. It's not niche. It's not a niche that I'm in the sense that I'm not identified. I can do all sorts of things, and people don't say, "Ooh, that's a cyber leader." But it's something that I can never get away from, and maybe that's what the Cybermen want. You can never get away from it.
Yeah.
That's something that Sandra Reed, the original costume designer of the 10th Planet, that's what she said to me when I interviewed her for the book. She said it had been 25 years since she'd done it. And she said, I'm beginning to believe that I can never get away from this. And it's true, I met her just at an event a few years ago, 2 years ago. And she was there again. She'd come across from Australia, which is how she now lives, in order to talk about it. We are all of us, all the people who've appeared here. We are all we're on elastic bands, but we keep getting pulled back to Doctor Who. And Sophie, just to talk about some of the images I saw there, Sophie in Silver Nemesis, she's such a remarkable, vital, free spirit. And I had this very dangerous sequence where I'm chasing her, going on this ramp in a place which is now the O2. That's where this was filmed. And not being able to look down because of this, not being sure of my footing. That is real excitement. And when you experience that excitement and danger with somebody else, you kind of feel bonded to them in some way. Janet's little fingers, Janet Fielding, in that clip where she's trying to rub the gold into my chest. That is something which I found quite exciting at the time, especially in rehearsal when I didn't have the suit on. It's less exciting when Peter has to take over and does the thing properly. But that's the thing, and I've met her again and again, and meeting Pete and meeting the people that you work with. We cannot get away from it, but there is something that I cannot deny is enjoyable.
Lovely. Well, it's been an absolutely wonderful, enjoyable experience for me to talk to you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid we don't have time for questions on this one, but I'm sure that David will be happy to talk to you in just a little while. So in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, David Back. It's an absolute pleasure, I have to say, for me to welcome to the stage a real legend of Doctor Who. Ladies and gentlemen, Captain Mike.
This is not affectation. I've just been zapped by a Cyberman.
Take a seat. Either or, whichever. No, just there. Lovely. Thank you. Right, Richard. Welcome to Who at Hoylake.
Thank you very much. Everybody happy? Yes! The answer really should be, you bet your life we are. Okay? Everybody happy? You bet your life we are. Very good, so am I.
Yeah. So, Richard, let's talk about the fact that you're not just Captain Mike Hicks, you were also an army captain as well.
Yes, absolutely. Yes,
So-
and I found that very useful because I didn't have to do any work preparing character. I just played myself.
So was that before you trained to be an actor? It was acting or a damson tree?
A damson tree.
A damson tree.
That is going right back to the very beginning.
That's where we'll start.
5
Damson
years
tree.
old.
Yes.
Where did you hear that story from? You
I've
see,
done
I'm
a lot
so
of research
question
this
now.
week. I've done an awful lot of research. Damson tree.
Well, yes, the damson tree, that is really where my theatrical career, literally where it started. I was evacuated during the war, and where I was an evacuee was in the, underneath the, well, not literally underneath, beside the Chiltern Hills. And there was a lovely damson tree in the garden. And I remember I was happiest, and I didn't know it at the time, but looking back on it, it is why I became an actor. The damson tree was in the garden, and I invited everyone around me, who were only the old men, the women, and the young children, because everybody else was in the war, and I cast a spell on them. I danced round the damson tree, giving spells to all the people. I can't remember whether they were nice spells or nasty spells, but the reason, looking back on it, why I am an actor is because I'm really happiest when I'm not me. I'm really happiest when I've got a mask on and I'm being somebody else.
So,
It's a free feeling.
yeah. Did your time working in the army then come before you trained as an actor?
I was 5 years old at the time. I wasn't in the army.
Ah, sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Rather, however.
Yeah, no, the army came first. When I left school, it was national service time. 2 years we all had to be in Army, Navy or Air Force. And I wanted to get it over as quickly as possible. Actually, I enjoyed it thoroughly. It was an amazing experience for me. I learnt all sorts of things. A bit of self-discipline was one. Well, other people's discipline, rather. And respect and doing things on time. And that came, obviously, before I went to university, and before I was in advertising, and then I came into theatre.
So what was it that made you think, I'm not going to take this career path, I am going to go into acting?
Well, I hadn't got a clue what I wanted to do. I really didn't know. Even when I came to leave university, I was at Oxford, and I didn't know what I was going to do. But in those days, there were lots of job offers. And there was a pile about that high of job offers, and I looked through all these, and One of them looked vaguely creative. It was to work in advertising, and it was also business as well. I thought that would satisfy my father. And so I went into advertising, had a wonderful time in advertising, and would probably still be there now. We had a family disaster, and it was major. And at the end of, when we got over that, I had this idea. I woke up one morning and thought, I want to be an actor. Where that came from, I don't know, except I'd done it at school and enjoyed it.
And then it was RADA.
And then it was RADA, yeah. I was very lucky to get in.
And after RADA, like Michael was saying before, then it was into the rep system, was it?
Oh, yes.
Also?
And this is something that theatre really suffers from now. It doesn't have a repertory system. There used to be hundreds of theatres locally. There would have been a hoylake repertory theatre. And that is where you learn your job, really. It's where you hone your job. You can learn a lot at drama school, but you don't really know, you don't know who your audience is until you play with lots of audiences in lots of different parts. And that's the stage when you think, I can make people laugh that way. So you go on doing it. You get to know yourself. I can make people cry. I can make people interested. And unfortunately, we don't have this rep system anymore. I'm afraid our Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher, cut all the funding. And it's, sorry, my voice is going. And so there is nowhere. I now do voluntary work at RADA. They have a buddy scheme there for students that are just about to leave. And I see these really talented people coming out, and there's nowhere for them to go. And, you know, unless they're very, very lucky.
Do you think it's more difficult to get into the industry now? Because I think, certainly with television, there seems to be less drama being made, really.
Well, yes, there is less drama being made. I mean, there are a lot of reality shows which are very cheap to make, or comparatively cheap to make. Yes, it's a great loss. And it's the live audience, it's you people, that actually create the actor.
Did your time in the army, because you talked before about discipline, and I suppose with rep, that must be so important if you're learning a script, you're rehearsing a script, and you're performing a script.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's perfectly true. It's hard work in rep. But then, actually, my very first television was Crossroads. Ooh. And when I got the part, I thought, oh, this is a load of absolute rubbish. And I rang up one of the senior casting directors who I happen to know, and I said to her, do you think I should do this? Is it going to be bad for my career? And she said, Richard, how much television have you done? And I said, well, I haven't done any, it's my first one. And she said, well, do it and learn. And actually, it was really good advice. And in that case, I forget the exact details now, but we had all the scripts were given to us on a Saturday night, Saturday midday, when we finished the previous week's work. On the Monday, we rehearsed, and in that week, we had to record 4 episodes.